Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. To my knowledge, I am the only health, fitness, and anti-aging podcast that talks about feeding your pets. We love our pets. They're part of the family. And sometimes we love them more than the people in our family. And we are being tricked today. We're being tricked by the pet food manufacturers. And I use that word tricked specifically. We're going to get deeper into this on today's show with Chelsea Kent. I think I called Chelsea Kent the patron saint of pets on an earlier show. I'm going to petition the Pope and see if I can get that taken care of because nobody cares more about your pets, not even you, than Chelsea does. And she spreads the information that helps people be better. Pet mommies and daddies. And today we're going to talk about that. Later in the show, I've got a monologue. I'm sure I'm going to piss some people off, but I'm going to talk about detox diets, detox teas, detox patches, detox foot baths. And if you're a purveyor of detox products, well, you may cry, you may hate me, you may never listen again, but I'm going to tell you the truth. Before we get started, we have to thank our title sponsor, and that is Legendary Foods, makers of the Tasty Pastry. The Tasty Pastry was designed to be an alternative to the Pop-Tart, and it is everything and more because it tastes amazing. It tastes like real cake. It tastes so good your kids will eat them. Less than 1 gram of sugar, 20 grams of high-quality protein, decadent flavors, 4 to 5 net carbs for those of us who are low carb people. And it's funny we're talking about low carb diets. Low carb diets have been shown in science to reverse brain aging, to reverse insulin resistance, to do all these amazing things. And we're going to be talking about carbohydrate content in your pet food today for a reason, because pets develop the same metabolic diseases that their human caretakers develop. It doesn't happen in the wild. So dog food, cat food, very, very important to the health of your pet, just like it is to us. We pay attention to carbs. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary. Use the code SHR10 to save 10% off and let them know that Carl sent you. And now, without further delay, welcome back to the show, Chelsea. How are you?
Great. Thank you.
So for those who may have missed some of the earlier shows that you and I have done, there is a dirty little secret about pet food today. And unlike human food, which we can go to a side panel and we can look and see the label claims of how much of this and how much of that is in it, finding that kind of information on your pet food is a bit more difficult, isn't it?
Yes, very much so.
So talk about that. Why do we see protein listed on pet food, but we don't see carbohydrates listed on pet food?
Well, the primary reason is that there's a nutrient requirement for protein. If you don't give protein to your dog or your cat, then they die pretty quickly. but there's actually no nutritional requirement at all for carbohydrates. So if you never gave your dog or cat a single gram of carbs in their life, they would be totally fine. So that's one reason. But also, originally, pet food was canned. It was shelf stable, and it was the only way to get it mass produced. And then war happened, and the government was like, you can't use the metal. We need that for this war. So,
Right.
yeah, so you're going to have to go ahead and figure something else out. And in the process of making Chex cereal, somebody was like, hey, we can make cereal for dogs and cats, and then we can go ahead and put less meat in it and have a shelf stable product within cardboard that we can stick on a shelf. So in order to make a pelletized food, you have to have high carbohydrate and lower protein, lower fat, or it just turns into a powder when you cook it.
Mm-hmm.
So carbohydrates are significantly less expensive than proteins. As we know, you can get a whole lot more corn or wheat or oats for, less money than paying for steak or lamb or whatever. So over time, the manufacturers have just capitalized on that and recognized that the higher the carb content, the cheaper it is to make, the more profit they make. So they also know, especially these days, people don't really want to see really high carb. They're less likely to buy it. So if they refuse to allow it to be put on the label, then the consumers don't notice that there's carbs in there. And then they're more likely to buy something that's 50 to 90% carbohydrates.
Now we have a sponsor, Visionary Pet Food, that specializes in a ketogenic pet food, and a couple years ago they looked at the top line of some of the most popular diet formulas. I mean, we're talking about had doctors' names on them, and they published the carb content. And I remember a lot of people had this almost sense of disbelief, like that can't be right. It can't be 55% carbohydrates because it says grain-free.
Mm-hmm.
So where do the carbohydrates come from in these? Because what happened was over the past 20 years, dogs started developing seizures and autoimmune type disorders. And we found out that when you take the corn out of the diet, those subsided. And then everybody got wise that, hey, grain is not really good for pets. So they took the grain out of the diet. What are they using for carbohydrate sources today?
Well, part of the issue with grains is actually that in pet food, it's typically distillers' grains, which is trash from the biodiesel industry and the alcohol production industry. So those grains are actually classified by the EPA as chemicals. They're not food products. So you kind of have layers of issues with grains when it's pet food. So what most companies managed to switch to was legumes. So grain-free does not equal carbohydrate-free. We all know that legumes are still pretty high carb.
Right. So I want to tell a story now that you talked about the leftover mash, as it's called, from distilleries. In 1901, 2,000 people on the East Coast, 2,000 children on the East Coast died from what is now historically called the Swill milk epidemic. In the late 1800s, people got their milk from the farmer. He delivered milk. The distilleries were in the cities, closer to everybody. They didn't have to come from far away. They were making booze, and they were left with this corn and grain mash. And they thought, we just throw this stuff away. See, and this is where we always get in trouble when industry tries to repurpose garbage to resell it to you. So someone came up with the bright idea. They said, look, we're bottling booze. Why don't we bottle milk? We'll just feed we'll get cows. We'll feed them the mash. We'll milk them. We'll sell the milk. We're in the city already. We don't have to go driving very far to deliver. And we're going to take over the milk industry. And what happened was feeding the cows this empty grain and corn mash, gave the cows something called mastitis. Mastitis produced pus in the udders. The pus got into the milk, and it killed 1,900 children, because back in the day, mothers would wean their children off of breast milk by giving them bovine milk, and it worked. It's worked since biblical times. We've never had a problem until the distillers got the bright idea that they could get into the milk business. Now, because the distilleries made a lot of money, they paid off a lot of politicians. Instead of being told, you just killed 1,900 people, you're out of this business, they convinced the politicians. They said, hey, there's this guy in France named Louis Pasteur. He may have come up with an answer for it. So they started pasteurizing milk. This is why milk is pasteurized today. Mm-hmm. It's not pasteurized because it makes a better product for you. It's pasteurized so that milk producers can kill the pathogens by not handling the milk properly and still sell it to you. But pasteurized milk is a dead animal. It's roadkill. It's dead. The reason I tell you this is because if it made the cows sick to eat the mash, it's got to be making your pet sick too, if that's part of the carbohydrate content. Do you think I'm being too overly concerned?
No, actually, I can even add to that. So an example of a distiller's grain is corn, and there's many, many grains. But with corn, when it runs through biodiesel production, it actually has one byproduct as well as 16 chemical ingredients, some of which are so toxic they're not allowed to release the water out of the building. But one of the byproduct ingredients is actually what they use for making Petri dishes. So not only would you
agar, they call it, right?
Yeah. So with the final product, like, not only are you getting something that's devoid of nutrition and full of chemicals, but you're also getting something that is so likely to grow bacteria and pathogens that they actually put 3 separate antibiotics into that final ingredient that then goes into your pet's food. And pet food and agricultural feed are under the same jurisdiction, so they get the same ingredients.
That's shocking. I never knew that. That's amazing. Holy mackerel. Okay. So people have become more conscientious about carbohydrate content of their pet food, but it's impossible to decipher. We're going to tell people how they can actually calculate it themselves in just a moment. But I also want to mention that the number one killer of golden retrievers and Labrador retrievers today is cancer. Mm-hmm. And we rarely see cancer in wild animals. I want to solidify the linkage between your pet's diet and diseases, because you will pay why can't I think of it? I want to say pediatrician, a veterinarian, tens of thousands of dollars to keep your pets alive, when it's the diet that made them sick, and getting them off that diet can help them. The San Diego Zoo had a grizzly bear, that developed congestive heart failure. Again, this is something we don't see in wild grizzly bears. But the grizzly bear was being fed a bear chow, a pelletized food made by a large manufacturer of pet foods that you would recognize the name. And by feeding the bear this food, the bear developed congestive heart failure, something we see in lots of humans. So I need to really strongly say to you that I know you love your pet, but I am telling you right now that unless you are doing the hard work of making sure your pet is eating a low carbohydrate food, you are killing your pet. You're developing a disease, and you will pay for it, because the veterinarian will charge you tens of thousands of dollars once your pet is sick, to put them on meds and all this other stuff. So really pay attention to this easy process of calculating.
I have a fun little game that I play with people sometimes that actually relates to your bear chow story. So I've looked at the ingredients of the bear chow, and they have monkey chow and like hedgehog and all the different species. And that gives the user of the product the implication that there's some kind of science behind formulation and that it's created specifically for that one species. Or even more, there are certain brands of dog food where they have specific breeds that they're advertising towards, implying that that breed needs that one specific food. So what I will do sometimes is I'll take an ingredient panel and I'll put it just on a plain Word document so you can't see anything else about it. I'll take fish food, dog food, hedgehog food, just whatever I randomly grab, and I'll put them all in a lineup, and I'll give the paper to somebody and I'll say, guess which one of these is dog food. Maybe 1% of the time they get it right because they're almost identical, no matter what species it is. So it's obviously a let's make profit on the same formula that's just made out of trash, not let's cater to the health of these specific animals or their species or their breed.
You know, I did my first show on feeding pets raw meats almost 12 years ago with Peter Rouse, who now lives in New Zealand. And I talk about this show all the time because I had a lot of people reach out to me and say, well, you're suggesting feeding my dog raw chicken and raw turkey, and what about the bones? And I say, well, who's picking the bones out of a wolf's throat? If it's not cooked, if it's raw, the animal can eat it. What happens is when you cook chicken, the bone dries out and it splinters, and yes, it gets caught in their throat. But feeding animals raw, now there's a responsibility. I mean, dogs can get sick if you're feeding them foul meat. But with that being said, if you have a relationship with a butcher and you say, look, I'm buying this for my dog, he can give you the scraps of that day. You can bring it home and feed it to your pet. And the reason I bring this up is because Richard Miller, who's a big fan of the show, I didn't know this about him. He says, my vet who disagrees with my boxer's raw diet of chicken wings, stew meat, eggs, kefir, and occasionally fruit says my dog has the clearest eyes, softest coat, and cleanest teeth, best breath, and she can't figure out how I'm doing this. But she disagrees with the raw, you know. So, and I had these two guys on who represented a veterinarian who came out with a dog food, and I suggested that dogs in the wild don't eat corn and grain. No farmer ever stepped out of his backyard door and said, God darn it, the wild dogs got into my wheat again, and the crop is gone now. You know, maybe the wild pigs will do that, but dogs don't do that. What would you say to people who are contending that dogs need some carbohydrates in their diet, which these two doctors, I said, but wild dogs, they said, well, domesticated dogs have evolved to need carbohydrates. What would you say to them?
Well, I too disagree. And generally, when I'm presented with that specifically, what I say is still in relation to human nutrition. So if your specific dog is not allergic to a specific grain, and you're getting that grain at the same quality that you would consume, then it's not necessarily going to be damaging to them if you're not overusing it. So the problem that we have right now is primarily that every single meal that they're getting is 50% or more carbohydrates, and it's not even something that a human would be legally allowed to consume because it's so toxic. So it's not even the same conversation. If you want to give your dog a carbohydrate, buy it from the grocery store so you know it's a good clean product, or get something where it's isolated. There are certain brands where they produce that for pets, but you can see the product so you know that it's good quality, and don't overuse it. So just like with humans, If you're about to have a lot of activity, you're going to go on a hike and you don't want to burn up your muscle, you can carb load before you leave. You can do the same thing with your pet, but if you're giving them a large amount of carbohydrates prior to activity versus a carbohydrate load all the time, and then they're laying around all day and all night while you're at work, it's a completely different conversation that you're having. So I think that the difficulty in the conversation with veterinarians is that they generally are not privy to an understanding of what carbohydrate means under the pet food regulatory umbrella. It's not at all what you visualize when you read the label.
If someone was making food for their pet, are sweet potatoes or yams a good source of carbohydrate for a pet?
Yeah, I think they're fine if they tolerate that well. I'm a bigger fan of rotation because everything has benefits and detriments. So if you don't have good moderation, then you can absolutely cause problems. I also don't recommend doing carbohydrates for really sedentary dogs.
Right.
So I think that you need to cater to your dog's specific age and activity level to decide whether or not that's appropriate for them and when.
So there's another little sneaky lie here, and that is that the pet food manufacturers suggest actually overfeeding most dogs. Do they not?
They do.
Talk about it.
Yeah, so every pet food label that I've ever seen suggests overfeeding the dog. Now, the primary reason for that is probably because on one little tiny analysis chart, you can't cater to any kind of nuance. You can't ask the questions of how old is your dog, how active are they, what's their current body composition, are they spayed or neutered, like things that affect metabolism. You can't ask those questions and change the suggestion. So they're just recommending a certain amount, like, this is probably good for just about everybody. But if you are asking those questions, 90% of the time, they're recommending about 20% higher caloric intake than what your pet really needs. And I've also done some lab tests on foods before and found that the number of calories that are in the product are actually not usually identical to the number that's listed on there. So you could be feeding as much as 40% more than your dog actually needs, which would explain a lot of the obesity crisis in pets that we have right now.
Do you think that there are some people that just leave the dog's dish down and the dog eats ad libitum? Do you think that that's a mistake? Should a pet only be, you put down what he's going to eat and that's it for the day? Or do you let the pet kind of graze as he goes?
So my number one issue with letting a pet graze is that it will delay your ability to identify a health problem if there is one. If you're used to putting down the food and they eat it immediately and one time they don't, you know right away something's wrong with your pet's food or your pet. Whereas if you leave it down all the time, it could be days before you notice that something is wrong, which could be too long to actually address an issue. So I think as far as metabolism goes, it's better to not free feed. Some dogs are capable of leaving the food sitting around. My argument to that is your pet has a very sensitive nose. They can smell things way better than we can. And if your pet's leaving their food sitting around, there's a good chance that they can smell that it's got some pretty nasty stuff in there that they probably don't want to eat. So my experience is the pickiest pets are not willing to leave a good quality food in the bowl. So right. Generally, I don't think it's a good idea to leave it down.
So what about this? Richard Miller says he finds that when his boxer is craving carbs, he will go eat grass. But when I put strawberries in his bowl with raw meat, the berries never get eaten. Is that true that when dogs are craving carbs, they eat grass? I always thought that was like a digestive thing to help them vomit up or something like that.
It can be. There's different types of grass. So if you have one of the really thick, rigid grasses, then they're probably trying to eat something that will help them to vomit. But fecal studies on canine and feline species actually show that the primary feline, like veggies that a dog would eat would actually be grasses and barks. So they might occasionally get into something else, but grass and bark are pretty natural things for them to consume. And it's not a bad idea just to grow a really fresh, clean grass indoors where you don't have to worry about chemicals or your neighbor's chemicals, whatever, and just trim that off and give that to them. If they like berries, fine. But if they don't, I don't see any problem with feeding a good quality thin grass.
Now, we're talking about dogs, but we are indirectly talking about cats. Talk a little bit about the cat requirement for nutrition, the effects of carbohydrates, and when you look at wild cat feces, what they generally eat in the wild.
So cats are fully obligate carnivores. Their metabolism, they're like aliens compared to dogs and humans. So they can't actually tolerate the same level of abuse nutritionally that dogs can. They do have to have higher protein, which makes things like kibble even more ludicrous to feed them because you're just giving them things for their body to reject, which in my opinion is one primary reason why most cats vomit all the time is their body's rejecting the carb content. But in fecal studies, they found that dogs will generally poop out about 10% grasses and barks, and cats will poop out about 4%. So their need for that is far, far lower than dogs.
And the last I want to cover before we go into the break is that in order to make kibble, they have to remove every bit of moisture in order for it to be shelf stable. That level of dehydration of the food causes problems for both dogs and cats in their kidney function, does it not?
It does, and it also contributes to cancer if they're not just dehydrating. So in kibble, you can't really only dehydrate a product. So the majority of them that are out there, they're getting condemned rendered meats. So they have to be high heat processed at like very high temperatures for a long period of time and made into a powder that's heavily sterilized, heat step 1, and then it's dried, heat step 2. It gets to the manufacturing facility and it gets mixed in with the other kibble ingredients and extruded, heat step 3, and then potentially dried again, heat step 4. So you're also getting a lot of acrylamides and heterocyclic amines and things that are very carcinogenic to them. Also, the dehydration can cause a variety of issues, even, bloat, torsion, joint problems, like you name it. You can kind of link most things to dehydration in some way.
It's funny. Humans about 10 years ago found out the dangers of high heat cooking meat, and that it produces AGEs, advanced glycation end products, that we then eat, and it's almost impossible to rid them from our body. I would imagine that those AGEs are accumulating and aging dogs even faster, and cats as well.
Yeah, and not only are they getting that just from the process of getting an extruded food, or in some cases, baked food. Not every food is like that. You have to do the company, but one of the primary fat sources in kibble products is actually used restaurant grease. So the French fry fryer grease that we are told we shouldn't eat on a French fry is almost the only thing that they're getting for fat.
How sad.
Mm-hmm.
This is sad. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to give you a link where you can learn how to decipher the carbohydrate content of your pet's food by using the label, even though they hide as much as they can. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman and your pet's health. There have been no new innovations in men's underwear for hundreds of years. That's all about to change with Sheath. Sheath creates 2 separate compartments for your man stuff so it doesn't get smashed into a mound and sweaty and stinky. I won't wear any other underwear now that I've learned about Sheath, and you won't either. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Sheath underwear. That's SHEATHUNDERWEAR. Use code SUPERHUMAN to save 20% off. I promise you, once you try a pair of Sheath underwear, you will never wear anything else. The Hercules Pre-Workout from Lost Empire Herbs is like no pre-workout you have ever had before. Completely natural formula designed specifically to optimize workouts, provide quicker recovery time, provide adequate nutrition, and get you away from all those no-good, overstimulating pre-workout supplements on the market today. The Hercules Pre-Workout blend is a mix of extracted natural herbs and mineral pitch. No fake colors, no added flavors, nothing else. Not only will Hercules Pre-Workout formula help your workouts, but you'll likely discover lots and lots of side effects, beneficial side effects. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Lost Empire today to learn more. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/White Oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 10% off your entire first order. GHKCU is one of the most effective peptides for rebuilding more youthful skin, reversing skin damage, diminishing wrinkles, and tightening loose skin. I personally use Restoracell with GHKCU every day. It's making an undeniable difference in the quality of my skin. Restoracell is fantastic for all types of skin. Now you can order Restoracell and save 25% when you use the code SHR25. That's SHR25. While you may be diligent in your workouts and your diet, don't neglect what people see first and foremost, and that's your skin. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blue and use code SHR25 today. Never before has a product been so appropriately named as Botanic Tonics Feel Free. This plant-based elixir combines a variety of different effective compounds, all from raw plant materials that at different doses provide you with completely different experiences. A third of a bottle puts you in the zone and makes you very focused and is ideal for a non-stimulating pre-workout. It also has a mild analgesic effect for us older lifters who have soreness and little pains and aches that keep us from training as ferociously as we want. A half a bottle will create a mild euphoric effect that will allow you to forego consuming alcohol but still be socially lubricated and have fun. I have never had a product deliver on its name the way Botanic Tonics Feel Free does, and I won't ever be without it, and you shouldn't either. Go to shrnetwork.biz/feel free and use the code SHR40 for 40% off your first order. I promise you, you will not be disappointed.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where we use oxygen for the power of good.
Welcome back. Just a heads up, if you are somebody who's been considering peptides and you're confused, you read this, you read that on the internet, some Facebook forum, and you want a peptide consultation with somebody who's been talking about peptides longer than anyone else in the category. I started talking about peptides in 2006 with Anthony Roberts. We did a show about GHRP. We did a show about IGF-1, and then shortly thereafter, IGF-1 long R3. And I've done shows about peptides ever since, and I've used peptides ever since. I'm offering 30-minute consultations. There is a cost. You have to fill out some paperwork so I can understand what your expectations are. But if you want to get it started, if you want a consultation, email me at hello@superhumanradio.net, and we will reach out and get the ball rolling. We're talking with Chelsea Kent today. We're talking about your pet's food. So, Chelsea, let's talk about the blog post, and I'm going to put a link up to it right now real quick. And if you go to shrnetwork.biz/petfoodmath, you will learn how to calculate carbohydrates and how much sugar is in your kibble, as well as carbohydrates in general. And I think most people will be shocked when they start doing this. Talk about the formulary a little bit. It's very easy, right?
Yeah, actually, it's a series of math equations that can help you figure out multiple things, including like how to calculate the carbohydrate content of the food, how to calculate the number of calories in an ounce of the particular food that you're using, the number of calories that you should be feeding your pet based on their specific metabolism, and then budget concern things like how long is a package going to last and how much is that going to cost you per month. So it's a whole series, and I'm in the process of working on adding more to it, like ketogenic diet math and how much poop your dog is capable of producing with how much you're feeding, things like that. But nothing actually requires more than elementary level math. It is really simple.
So for humans, about 9 calories per pound of body weight is where the fat loss magic starts. It can be less than that depending on your metabolism, but 9 is usually where we start with somebody. If somebody says, I really want to lose some body fat, I'm already training, I'm doing cardio, we get them into that 9 calorie per pound of body weight. And then we watch them. Are you losing weight? Are you gaining weight? Are you staying the same? And then we adjust from there. Is there a starting point, a calorie per pound of body weight for dogs?
Not that I've ever seen, in large part because dogs vary so much. So you can have a dog that's a Chihuahua and its maximum size is 6 pounds, and you can have a dog that's 220 pounds. So because different breeds have different metabolisms, it's not that simple. And one thing that's actually listed on that website, the solutionspetproducts.com, on one of the pages, it actually mentions that if you were to take a hummingbird and make it 150 pounds, like a human, average human, then it would end up needing 155,000 calories a day. Versus an elephant, if you made it 150 pounds, it would need 700 calories a day. So in general, the larger the species, the larger the animal, the lower their caloric need is per pound. And I find that to be true with pets. So over a little more than 15 years of doing these calculations and playing around with them and thousands of dogs later, I find that generally speaking, there's kind of ranges which are listed on that site to give you an idea of how much you should be feeding. So like smaller dogs are as much as 200 to maybe 250 calories per 10 pounds, and larger dogs are usually closer to 100.
Does feeding timing play a role in dogs and cats? With humans, you don't want to have your biggest meal late at night before you go to sleep for obvious reasons. Is it wiser to feed your pet early in the day, in the middle of the day? Is fasting important for pets?
I think that fasting can be really valuable, but I find that not all of them tolerate it. And generally speaking, the older they get, the less they tolerate it. So a lot of times people will have problems with their pets vomiting first thing in the morning. And if you ask them, what time did you feed dinner? It's like 3 o'clock. And if you tell them to split dinner, feed maybe 75% of it at 3 o'clock and then 25% at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, then they won't vomit in the morning anymore. So if your pet can tolerate it, then for all the same reasons that it's beneficial to humans, I recommend doing intermittent fasting. And again, not leaving the food down all the time, but not every pet tolerates it.
And as a rule, feeding your pet very late at night, even if they tolerate fasting, is probably not wise, because then they're not going to be active for hours and hours and hours, right?
Right.
Okay. Do you think that wet foods are superior to dry foods when we're talking about dog food specifically? I know a lot of people use wet cat foods, but are wet foods making a comeback? Because when I was a kid, we didn't have dry dog foods and cat foods. Everything was in a can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so raw pet foods are extraordinarily heavily regulated comparatively in this industry. So if it's commercially available raw, I can guarantee you it has better regulation than any other sector of the pet food industry. So in that sense, yes, it's much better. Dehydrated and freeze-dried, also better because it's lower carb, and they really don't have a choice but to use better quality ingredients because they're not sterilizing it, and because you can also see and smell those ingredients a lot better. Canned food, it potentially could be better, but canned food is actually specifically excluded from adulteration laws, which means you can know for a fact that the ingredients that you're purchasing for canned pet food are contaminated with anything from cockroaches to pesticide spills. There's a whole page on it on the FDA website, and legally you can be allowed to use that. You have to petition to be able to do so. So those companies are logged, but it's very hard to find those logs and who's doing it. So you have to be careful with the quality.
This doesn't make any sense to me, because it's canned. It can be crap. Like,
yeah.
Who came up with that plan?
I wish I knew. I don't know that.
Now, you go to a lot of these industry meetings where regulators come in and talk about policies to improve the quality of pet food. No one has ever brought up like, hey, we got to tighten up the canned dog food. Like, we can't do this. This is crap. We can't feed this to our pets. Or is the attitude still, oh, it's a dog. Oh, come on, we're talking about a dog here,
Yeah, arguably the arguments that they make are the opposite of what you were implying. I actually brought up corn gluten meal and how it's toxic and has a bunch of toxic ingredients in front of more than 400 regulators, and they all laughed at me. And I was like, look it up. One of the other advocates that I attend those meetings with, she said that she doesn't like that the cows are fed ground up yogurt with the plastic cups mixed in because the plastic is then being consumed and all of those contaminants can get into the milk, and she doesn't want her daughter drinking that kind of milk. And the entire room of regulators booed at her. I've seen the soap industry get in fights with the rendering industry before over who gets to use an ingredient that's known to be toxic. And the soap industry has used it for external use only. And it's being fed to cattle, and they're angry about it. And on the very next meeting, that ingredient had a definition for use to feed to cattle, to include BSE as an authorized portion of it. You can have up to 0.15% mad cow and still feed it to cattle. So I would say there are not regulators in general that I've known to try to fight to do better. There are individual regulators that I've seen try to be more accepting of it, but they're not the majority, so they don't tend to speak up most of the time in my experience.
So maybe we have to have kind of a Project Veritas approach where somebody goes in and tapes these meetings and then
they won't allow it.
What's that?
They won't allow it.
Yeah, I know they won't allow it. And believe me, nobody wants Project Veritas taping their conversations at a bar one night. They don't allow it either. But I think somebody needs to go in there with like stealth recording equipment and then anonymously putting this stuff up on YouTube and spelling it out. Like these are poisons and these are the regulators, and they're saying it's okay to put this poison in your dog's food. Like, you know, that old saying that the sunlight is the most antiseptic thing in the world, you know, like like we need someone to go and do a Project Veritas with these dog food people, so we can get it out there, because they know.
Yeah.
They know they're harming the pets. And because you can pick it up at your Kroger's grocery store, everybody just assumes, well, this is okay for my dog.
Well, an unfortunate truth about that is also people tend to have an emotional response to finding this information out. They feel like they've been doing something wrong and that they're going to be judged. And so as a result of that, rather than thinking, well, I just didn't know better, and now I do, and now I can do better, instead they have this strong, like, well, that can't possibly be true, like fight response in them. And so there are a lot of things out there that are posted, like truthaboutpetfood.com is one of the best resources for what goes on in those meetings and for understanding all this behind the scenes stuff. And I know so many people that think that Susan Thixton is crazy. And I'm like, just because you don't want to believe it doesn't mean it's not true. So it's hard to get the info out because people are emotionally connected to it.
Chrisese Fox says cats are kind of nocturnal, aren't they? I feed my cat at night as he plays and hunts. Then I sleep all day. Otherwise, the cat would probably wake her up and want her. What do you think about that?
I would say if your cat happens to be really active all night, then that's fine. If you have a cat that's sedentary, then that's when it would be doing metabolic damage to feed late.
Yeah. And I was thinking the same thing. If your cat's going to really be moving all night long, then feeding the cat at night. And that's true of your dog too, but most dogs are pretty set in their ways. They sleep at night. Mm-hmm. Or they sleep all the time. They just fall asleep all the time.
That's right.
Oh no, she's saying her cat sleeps all day.
Yeah. So feeding at night is fine then.
Yeah. Cat sleeps all day. Yeah, absolutely. Feed the cat at night. No problem. I want to take our last commercial break, and when we come back, we will plug the way to get the information so you can calculate your own pet's carbohydrate content and so on. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio.
Dogs should be powered by fat and protein, not carbs. That's why Visionary Pet makes low-carb, ketogenic dog food for dogs of all breeds and life stages. From kibble to freeze-dried and even low-carb treats, all Visionary Pet recipes are very low-carb, ketogenic, and made with 100% real meat protein. Shop now and use code SHR for 20% off your first order today. Your dog deserves the lifelong benefits of optimal nutrition. Make the switch to Visionary and see why smart dogs eat low carb.
Are you suffering from signs of an unhappy gut? Diversity is the key to healthy, robust inner ecosystem. Body Ecology probiotic liquids are made by fermenting organic seeds, biodynamic brown rice, and chickpeas together to create a diverse culture found nowhere else on Earth. It's the secret to restoring your gut's microbiome for a healthier digestive tract, improved immune function, and longevity. Take 20% off by visiting the website shrnetwork.biz/bodyeco, shrnetwork.biz/bodyeco, that's BODYECO, and using the code SHR20. P3OM from Bioptimizers is a patented prebiotic and probiotic supplement with Lactobacillus plantarum OM. It has now been upgraded to P3OM 2.0 with the addition of a superfood formulation that makes it 2 times stronger, as well as optimizes L. plantarum's strength, so it's more powerful than ever, which means that not only will it help you completely digest all animal proteins, it also reduces cortisol, causes deep relaxation and better sleep, and reduces stress. Go to shrnetwork.biz/P3-OM today and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off.
New Mass Pro Synthogen X2 just upped its own legendary game. To distance itself even further from the rest of the pack, Synthogen X2 now has double the key active ingredients. If you've ever wondered what steroid-like recovery feels like, Synthogen X2 delivers. See why others compare it favorably to powerful bodybuilding drugs at synthogen.com. Mass Pro Synthogen. When you train with it, you'll gain with it.
Are you 35 or older? Every year after puberty, your growth hormone decreases sometimes by 50% by the age of 35, and it only keeps going down from there. This affects everything from making it harder to recover from workouts, sleep, and a general loss of a sense of well-being. It also affects your ability to get and stay lean. BioPro Plus is the first of its kind, 100% non-synthetic alternative to prescription synthetic growth hormone treatments. All the benefits without any of the needles or side effects and 100% safe. Previously only available through doctors, you can go to shrnetwork.biz/biopro, that's BIOPRO, and use code SHR30 for $30 off today. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/MyPillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website.
Move over, superheroes. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. We're talking with Chelsea Kent. We're talking about your pet and your pet's food. And you know, people don't feed their pets to make them sick. And I understand if you learn that you're doing something to make your pet sick, how your first reaction could be that's not true. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of things coming out in the media in the past 3, 4, 5 years that people repel the idea of. And now we're going, oh my God, it's true. So be open-minded. You care about your pet. And so be open-minded to learn that and a lot of us have dogs. Like my sister had a schnauzer named Duffy. She had to give him insulin. Now think about this. He ate kibble. We didn't realize that kibble was probably 55, 60% carbohydrates. And she had to give the dog insulin shots every single day. Well, what's the antithesis to the insulin shots? Well, lowering blood sugar naturally by cutting out the carbohydrates. Nobody had that talk with her. Nobody mentioned to her that, oh, yeah, your dog is diabetic because 50, 60% of his diet is carbohydrates. That's what makes humans diabetic. So a lot of us have dogs and cats that we go to the veterinarian and they go, oh, your dog has got this, your cat's got that. Well, we got to give them this medicine and do this and that procedure. When 99% of it is from what you're feeding your pet. And I know a lot of people may say that's not true, Carl. No, it is true because we dogs and cats in the wild. My friend Joey took in a feral cat. It had been attacked by something, and it was really beat up bad. Beautiful gray cat, and he took the cat in. He saved the cat's life, and now the cat is a house cat. Well, he feeds that cat kibble. That cat never ate kibble before. That cat ate rodents and snakes and worms and, and stuff that he found in the woods. And his life is going to be shorter, not longer, because of the diet that he's on. And you can't tell people that. They're like, well, he's a cat. What am I going to do? I'm not going to go cooking his food for him. I understand that the people sometimes don't want to know this. It's like, oh, please, my life is so busy. I got 3 kids. I'm working all day. the last thing I need to do is start worrying about what the cat or the dog is eating. But look, you're making your pet sick by not knowing. So here's an easy way to at least know. Go to shrnetwork.biz/petfoodmath. Start on that first article. There's other articles to follow. Learn about how to read your pet's label, pet food label, because the industry doesn't want you to. That should piss you off alone. What do you think about probiotics for pets?
Well, I think they're especially important if you're feeding a dead, high heat processed diet. So I think that if you're feeding a natural diet, then not all pets need any kind of additions. I think that they can be beneficial for some of them.
Chrissy's Fox says there's good Facebook groups for feeding felines raw diets, transitioning your cat to real and raw food. Yeah, and you do have to transition because the microbiome has to catch up. You know, you titrate. You know, you feed 2/3 what you normally feed and 1/3 of the new stuff, and then you slowly shift that over the course of weeks. Some pets adapt to it quickly. I mean, you know, some of them don't poop all over the house the first day you change things. It just depends. Every pet is different. You know, I hate to say this, but Rodney Habib and Dr. Karen
Becker.
Yeah, I mean, she's been on my show. Both of them have been on my show. But I've heard from people that they're kind of shifting on kibble and pet food and stuff like that. I don't know how true that is. I don't follow them. Do you know if they are still in this camp here that we're talking about, or are they kind of succumbing to the pressures of industry?
No, I don't think that they're succumbing to the pressures of industry. I do know them. I think one place where they sometimes may come across that way is that they recognize that their audience is so enormous that sometimes it's also a matter of accessibility. So they will have the conversation of what I think is best is doing a raw diet. And I also think that you need to consider these things about doing a raw diet, because I've known people that say, yeah, I'm feeding raw. I give my pet chicken and rice. And I'm like, well, how much chicken are you giving? And it's like 20% of the diet and the rest is just white rice. And I'm like, ah. So yeah, that can be a problem just because you're doing fresh foods. That's not enough. You have to be formulating correctly. But then they'll also say, if you can't do that, then here's your next step down and your next step down. So they have just recognized the value for reaching more people, of providing next best. But I don't think that that means that they feel like that is in any way as good as best.
Yeah, no, I agree. What are your thoughts? I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but what are your thoughts of Visionaries keto pet food?
Well, you know, when they first started looking into formulating that, I was like, good luck. But I'm pretty impressed with the way that they managed to do it. So it was very creative. And ultimately what they did is they traded out, like what I said earlier, you have to have a binder to make a kibble, or it just falls apart when you cook it. So it'll just turn into a powder. So in order to have a binder, it's a carbohydrate, right? Well, what they did is basically instead they used a fiber. They used miscanthus grass. And like I said earlier, if you're using grass as an ingredient, then that's actually way better than the majority of the grains or legumes that are out there. It's much more close to what a natural canine would consume. So I've been really impressed with their ability to have created that product at all.
You know what's really fascinating to me? There are people out there that are like so deep into the keto diet world, you know, keto mama, and they don't feed their pets keto. I find that fascinating. It's like, why didn't you make the transition in your mind that if keto was good for me, it would be good for my pet too? They don't. They feed their pets, you know, Eukanuba or some, you know, some science diet, but they eat keto. And because I had this conversation with Ron, I was like, maybe you should just market exclusively to keto people. He says, we have. They're non-responsive. I'm like, what? Like they know the value of the keto diet. They don't see the value of feeding their pet keto. That's like, that just blinded me when he said that.
Yeah. And that goes back a little bit to what I was just saying about Rodney and Karen. So if you are feeding a child a ketogenic diet, then they're not going to grow quite the same.
Right.
So there are times that you want to do that. But in general, keto is not ideal for them. Cats, they have to have higher protein, but that doesn't mean that the fundamentals of what keto is doing for them is different. So still feed them fresh foods, just with a slight modification so that you're giving them the higher protein content that they need. So if you did a keto diet base and then you add in, say,
raw meat,
or beef liver, or add in something else, then you still have the fundamental benefits of keto without any of the problems. So I think, keto and then next best in certain situations, adding in something else.
I like that. Because the bodybuilders use a high protein keto diet to build muscle. If you're not fighting cancer, brain cancer, or seizures, you don't have to do the 80% fat. You can do 70% protein and very, very low carb. Keep your carbs under 60 grams a day, and the rest can be fat, and you can grow muscle and feel great. The funny thing is, people think the keto diet is this particular diet. The keto diet is any diet that produces ketones. You can be a vegan and produce ketones. So we have to stop thinking about keto as this, exclusively high-fat diet. And instead, we need to start thinking more of it as a low-carbohydrate diet, because low-carb diets produce ketones.
Yep.
So last comment from the audience, and this comes from longtime listener Craig Hollander. He said, I taught my clients to feed their pets lightly seared meats to kill the outer bacteria, and they can chew on an asparagus if fiber is needed, or a little cooked rice. What do you think of that? Asparagus.
Oh, I think asparagus is fine if your pet will eat it. Most veggies are fine if they'll eat it. The lightly seared meats thing, I think, is fantastic if it's a whole meat. If you have a ground meat, then obviously the bacteria can get inside. So make sure that it's good quality. And I would just recommend adding a unpasteurized, good quality milk to something like that, because just like breastfeeding an infant, milk is in and of itself a whole diet. So if you're not formulating, milk and eggs are the best way to make sure that you're covering the nutritional bases.
Fascinating. Last question comes from Sean Wasson. He says, what does Chelsea think of the Fresh Pet Meat Log? What the hell is that?
That is a grocery store product that is refrigerated. I suggest Googling it and looking at the images, and you might not use it again.
Okay. It's funny because back in the day we had butchers, and now everything has been relegated to, larger grocery stores. And back in the day, you could go to a butcher and you could say, I want to buy some scrap meat for my pet. And they would sell it to you. They'd say, what do you want? Well, just give me some beef trimmings and some fat. Now, they won't do it because they're afraid of the liability. Like, if your pet gets sick, you're going to come back and complain. No. But I wish there was more sources for local. And I guess, come to think of it, I guess if I asked my Mennonite farmer who sells me stuff, or maybe White Oak Pastures. I mean, they're a sponsor of mine. I wonder if they'll sell people some raw trimmings. But if you know where you're getting it from, there's no problem. The problem is when you don't know. Like this pet log doesn't even sound fresh pet meat log doesn't even sound good to me. It's like the idea that they pressed it into a log scares me.
Yeah, I agree. If you know where it's coming from, then it's good. And more and more. I mean, the first raw pet food on the market was Steve's, and that came out sometime around like 98 to 2000. And since then, there have been so many brands that have come on the market, and you still have to be meticulous with identifying that they have good sourcing and they know what they're doing and they're doing it well and all the things. But regardless, everybody's gotten very creative with the way that they can present it. So you can get fresh foods that are made in like little pellets, just like a kibble. You can get them in, I call them goose poops. You can get them in sliders that are 1 ounce, 2 ounce. You can get patties. You can get 1 pound chubs, 2 pound chubs, 5 pound blocks. Like what works for you, I can pretty much guarantee that it's available. So they just audit the company for quality, but I can assure you that if there's some kind of limitation, like I'm a vegan, yet that I don't like, I need to feed my pet fresh food, but I don't want to touch meat. There's a product available for you where you don't have to touch it or blend it or cut it or do anything but plop it out of the bag.
Right.
It's good.
Let's put this up one more time, and I'm going to put the direct banner. So pet food math is what we're talking about, how to interpret the label of your dog or cat's food to determine how much carbohydrates and sugar there may be in it. Solutionspetproducts.com is the website where these blogs exist. If you wanted to go directly to the page itself, you can go to shrnetwork.biz/petfoodmath. Chelsea, thanks for being here today, as always. Thanks for helping us make people smarter pet owners, and their pets will thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Talk to you soon. Take care. All right, we're going to take one quick commercial break, and when we come back, I am going to do a monologue. If you're somebody who loves to buy detox teas, you believe that drinking hot water and lemon first thing in the morning is detoxing your body, I have some news for you. You may or may not like it, but either way, it's the truth. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio. There have been no new innovations in men's underwear for hundreds of years. That's all about to change with Sheath. Sheath creates 2 separate compartments for your man stuff so it doesn't get smashed into a mound and sweaty and stinky. I won't wear any other underwear now that I've learned about Sheath, and you won't either. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Sheath underwear. That's SHEATHUNDERWEAR. Use code SUPERHUMAN to save 20% off. I promise you, once you try a pair of Sheath underwear, you will never wear anything else. Being superhuman means being conscientious about the choices we make. White Oak Pastures is superhuman when it comes to raising livestock. They're committed to animal welfare, land regeneration, and rural revival. They responsibly manage the entire process from the pasture to your doorstep. High-quality, pasture-raised, great-tasting meat from a farm you can trust. Full nose-to-tail selections. They even have options for your pet. Go to shrnetwork.biz/White Oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 10% off your entire first order. P3OM from Bioptimizers is a patented prebiotic and probiotic supplement with Lactobacillus plantarum OM. It has now been upgraded to P3OM 2.0 with the addition of a superfood formulation that makes it 2 times stronger, as well as optimizes L. plantarum's strength, so it's more powerful than ever, which means that not only will it help you completely digest all animal proteins, it also reduces cortisol, causes deep relaxation and better sleep, and reduces stress. Go to shrnetwork.biz/P3-OM today and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off. Never before has a product been so appropriately named as Botanic Tonics Feel Free. This plant-based elixir combines a variety of different effective compounds, all from raw plant materials that at different doses provide you with completely different experiences. A third of a bottle puts you in the zone and makes you very focused and is ideal for a non non-stimulating pre-workout. It also has a mild analgesic effect for us older lifters who have soreness and little pains and aches that keep us from training as ferociously as we want. A half a bottle will create a mild euphoric effect that will allow you to forego consuming alcohol but still be socially lubricated and have fun. I have never had a product deliver on its name the way Botanic Tonic's Feel Free does, and I won't ever be without it, and you shouldn't either. Go to shrnetwork.biz/feelfree and use the code SHR40 for 40% off your first order. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. GHKCU is one of the most effective peptides for rebuilding more youthful skin, reversing skin damage, diminishing wrinkles, and tightening loose skin. I personally use Restoracell with GHKCU every day. It's making an undeniable difference in the quality of my skin. Restoracell is fantastic for all types of skin. Now you can order Restoracell and save 25% when you use the code SHR25. That's SHR25. While you may be diligent in your workouts and your diet, don't neglect what people see first and foremost, and that's your skin. Go to shrnetwork.biz/blue and use code SHR25 today. The Hercules Pre-Workout from Lost Empire Herbs is like no pre-workout you have ever had before. Completely natural formula designed specifically to optimize workouts, provide quicker recovery time, provide adequate nutrition, and get you away from all those no-good, overstimulating pre-workout supplements on the market today. The Hercules Pre-Workout blend is a mix of extracted natural herbs and mineral pitch. No fake colors, no added flavors, nothing else. Not only will Hercules Pre-Workout formula help your workouts, but you'll likely discover lots and lots of side effects, beneficial side effects. Go to shrnetwork.biz/lostempire today to learn more.
You're listening to the Superhuman Channel. Don't hate us because we feel good.
Hey, welcome back. This won't be long. This will be very, very brief. It came up on a show yesterday, and I decided to do a brief monologue about the detox bullshit out there. There's all these detox products, detox tea, and there's even like stupid stuff like a foot bath that when you put your feet in it, the water turns black because they're trying to say that all of the toxins in your body rush down to the soles of your feet and are being released. And, I guess that old adage, there's a sucker born every day, is real. And, people have to make money. So if you're gullible and you can be lied to easily, then you deserve what you get. So let's talk about what people think about when they talk about toxins and detox, right? We come in contact with tons and tons of chemicals from our diet, from our environment. And these are real toxins. These are toxins that have been associated with diseases, with cancers. So where do these toxins go when you're exposed to them? Well, if you're eating things that have toxins in them and you're on a low-fat diet, they're not coming out your butthole. Because toxins are attracted to and stored in fat. In fact, back in the day, when somebody consumed poison, whole milk, whole cream, egg yolks, they would give them things with fat because that would sequester the poison and allow you to get it out of your body. This is well known. But you also have to understand that toxins are stored in your fat cells of your body. So if you're somebody who's moderately obese, you've got a lot of toxins that are stored in your fat cells that got stored in your fat cells over the course of decades. And if you think drinking lemon and hot water in the morning is detoxing you, or soaking your feet in a detox bath and then the water turns black, like let me put it this way. If in fact you took a pill or drank something or put your feet in a bathtub and it literally had the ability to get all of the fat cells in your body to release the toxins into your bloodstream so that it can go down there and turn the water black or you could urinate it out, you die. It's called toxic shock syndrome. When your body is comes into contact with such a large amount of toxins that your liver can't help you, nothing can help you, you die. That's what happens. And there was a study done about 10 or 12 years ago that showed that women who underwent rapid fat loss developed breast cancer 5-fold greater than women who did not. I mean, that was the discerning factor, was the rapid fat loss. And why is that? Because rapid fat loss means all these toxins are being squirted into your blood over the course of a very short period of time. Your body just can't handle it. Because remember, it took decades for it to be stored, and now you're just getting rid of it in 3 months. So the reality is that drinking teas and eating detox diets are just going to detoxify your digestive tract. Whatever's in your stomach, whatever's in your intestines, whatever's in your colon will be carried out. But it's not calling the toxins from all this other tissue in your body and say, hey, come on, get on the train and we're going to get you out of here. We're going to help detoxify this idiot here. Because you're an idiot if you think that's what's happening. Okay? If you truly want to detox, you can do it. The first thing is make sure you include fat in your diet. Every meal should have some fat in it. So that if there's anything on the vegetables that you're eating, toxins, they will get sequestered in the food fat and carried out. Number one. So you're not adding new toxins into your body. Number two, lose body fat, but slowly. Don't do stupid diets like the HCG diet or anything like that. Lose body fat slowly, because what will happen is your body fat cells shrink, these toxins are released, your liver handles them, gets them out, and so on. The other thing is donate blood every couple months. Your blood is like dirty engine oil. Imagine if you had the same oil in your car from when you bought your car. Get rid of some of that dirty blood. The body will repair, or what's the word I'm looking for? Replenish, by making new clean blood. And if you go and you get your blood, if you donate your blood every 2 months, I think Adele Musa once helped me figure this out. A closed system, which your blood stream is, it would take like just close to 2 years of donating blood every 2 months to where you actually have almost all brand new blood in your body. How exciting is that? Isn't that amazing? And that's going to get rid of toxins as well. And of course, make sure you have regular bowel movements, because that's the way the body gets rid of the immediate toxins it's taking in. Don't buy detox tea. Don't buy any of the detox bullshit. It's nonsense. Don't waste your money. Don't be fooled. Be smart. You can detox, lose body fat, eat fat in your diet, donate blood every couple of months, and make sure you have regular bowel movements. And over time, and of course, avoid toxins. Eat organic foods, because then they're not sprayed. You know, think about that. Think about the new stuff coming in. But don't buy these stupid products. It's all bullshit. I mean, my God, take that money and donate it to somebody. Give that money to a good charity instead of spending it on detox products. They're a lie. Don't be stupid, okay? All right, we'll see you tomorrow with more Superhuman Radio. Thank you for being here today.